Welcome to another YouTube live video. I wanted to do this for a little while. We haven't done a live video for ages. Throughout this lockdown period, obviously things have just started to kind of slowly get back to normal. So we just haven't had the time to do it. But I appreciate everyone who's going to be watching this video carrying on from those live videos that we used to do. So welcome back everyone. And if you haven't seen those before, here we go, we're starting afresh. I wanted to start doing some YouTube live stuff again because I felt it was a really great way to interact with a lot of our customers and just people on YouTube that we don't get to interact with on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people do comment on the videos, which we always really appreciate, but we don't always have the facility to get back to you straight away. And that's kind of the point of these videos as well. What I'm going to do going forward, as you can probably tell, is it's just me. I'm on my own, on my phone. I don't have Luke, I don't have any technical support. So you'll have to kind of forgive the workarounds here. It's just going to be audio from my phone and just general chatter from me, really. I want to try and, as I say, address a lot of your questions that we get, so keep those piling in. And I'm also going to use this as an opportunity just to show you some cool bits of gear from around the shop, and especially stuff that, again, I might not always get the opportunity to show you in a regular video, a feature video or a listing or anything like that. This guitar, which I'm going to talk about in a second, is a very good example of that fact. So anyway, here we are. I hope you're all doing well. I hope that lockdown hasn't killed you all yet. I'm sure there's a few people watching at least. And as I used to say on our previous lockdown live videos, I really appreciate everyone that's given us your custom throughout this time period. It's been a manic time, but I'm actually sat in one of the, it's the Gibson custom shop room, come appointment room, which I'm sure anyone who's been here will know that we're now operating the store on an appointment only basis. So if you have been fortunate enough to come along, if you've tried some stuff out, you've probably either been in this room or a room downstairs. But we are operating back. The shop is back open again to the public, but in a more limited kind of way. We're really, everything's online now, as you know. You're watching this video, so you know that. So anyway, as I say, I'm going to show you some cool bits of gear today, just stuff that's really kind of piqued my interest over recent days, weeks, months, whatever it might be. I'm going to kind of keep it relative to the time frame of the videos when I do them. Hopefully this will be a weekly thing still going forwards. So what I want to do today, as well as answer some of your questions, I did put out a thing on Instagram earlier talking about getting some questions from you, which a few people have responded to. I appreciate that, and I will address a few of those. But yeah, I'm going to show you some gear. So I teased this guitar. So what this is, I'm going to give it its proper name. This is the Troublemaker telecaster. I think someone actually already pointed that out. Let me just adjust this so I can make sure I'm not missing any comments. Jim Wang, yeah, Troublemaker Telly, well spotted. So this guitar, I was doing this in a feature video that will be coming out very soon, where we're just kind of looking at some some different Telecaster options that are available in the kind of USA price bracket. We want to move down sometimes from custom shop because it can be a bit daunting. A lot of customers aren't looking in that price range. They're looking at stuff more in line with the Troublemaker, which is actually, it's actually a Japanese-made guitar. So in this kind of price bracket, you've got a lot of healthy competition, especially within just Fender themselves. There's obviously other brands that make similar guitars, but we're sticking with Fender. And this guitar really blew me away, and this actually happens to answer one of the Instagram questions I got from a man called Dario. So if you're watching this, Dario, I'm hopefully going to answer your question within this little segment as well. This Troublemaker Tele, I just thought was a really cool instrument. So it's obviously a dual humbucking Telecaster with 2 volumes and 2 tones, so it's kind of Gibson-esque in its layout. It's also kind of similar to a Tele Deluxe, early 70s Tele Deluxe, and I just thought that for the money of this guitar, the spec that you're getting, including like this solid, pretty sure it's a mahogany neck and a mahogany wood body, so it's totally different than any other Fender that you might have experienced before. And as you'll have heard in the little intro there, it's a great sounding guitar. I'm also playing a couple of other bits in the chain that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So let me just play the guitar a little bit more, and you'll get a bit more of an idea of why I was really quite taken with this, and why, to answer your questions, area of what do I consider to be the best Fender non-custom shop guitar, this one's in the running for that. So let me show you what I mean. So it's got a really nice clean tone, which I wasn't expecting. Sometimes when guitar brands that don't usually make humbucker equipped guitars make guitars with humbuckers on them, they sometimes have a tendency to overblow the power of them. They can sound a bit muddy, but Fender of course know exactly what they're doing, and this guitar just has that real nice Fender clarity when clean. So that's both pickups. If I do some neck pickup stuff, really nice. It just doesn't sound like a humbucker. That's what kind of struck me with it. But then if you go the opposite direction, definitely a dual personality guitar. I can see why they call it the Troublemaker. I guess it's going to upset a few people. It's going to ruffle a few feathers of Telecaster purists, but you know, the days are long gone of just sticking to the original formula. If you want something different, there's 10 a penny guitars now that will give you slight different variants on the Telecaster theme or the Strat theme or whatever it is. But this Troublemaker guitar, I'm having trouble getting it focused. I'm sat right underneath the light, so I apologise if it doesn't look quite right, but I did pick the white one, which was all for me. But there we go, Troublemaker Tele. So if you're interested in a non-custom shop Telecaster kind of quirky guitar, this is a great contender for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to continue to use this, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of other bits of cool gear. We've actually recently, and it was only brought to my attention when I revisited the shop this week, John's decided to take on a bunch of new pedal brands, which is really exciting. I think it's always a good time when that happens, because it means there's just an abundance of new products that come in and starts to show us what else is out there on the market. And what's nice is that this time around we've got some brands that aren't the norm. They're not the stuff that we're used to seeing, and they're really products that I think will appeal to some more contemporary players, as well as kind of the classic players that want something just new and interesting to try. So what I'm speaking about specifically, and what I'm playing today that I picked out, is a pedal from Meris, which I've got the box of the pedal here. Really cool packaging for a start. I guess they're kind of sitting in the Strymon vein. They make a similar kind of format size pedal. It's plugged in, so I can't show you right now, but this is the Mercury 7 reverb, and I did put it on right at the end of the little opening clip that I did. And it's one of those reverb pedals that you never quite know what you're going to get out of it. I mean, it's all well and good if you're just like a Hall of Fame kind of user or a Boss reverb or whatever, and you like that sound. I like that sound because it's stable and it's secure and you know what you're going to get. But this Mercury 7, I think, is going to challenge some people's perceptions and you know, kind of challenge you to play some new things. And I always like gear that does that. So let me show you what it does. I've got a little bit of spring reverb on the amp and a bit of slapback delay. You might not hear that. Now, if I put the reverb on, you're definitely going to hear this. It's a weird sounding pedal, but I think it's really good. So what I've got here is a fairly conservative reverb setting, but there's this control on it called pitch vector, and that adds in, I guess, like a pitch modulation to the reverb effect. So what I've got it set on right now is 1 octave down, so you can kind of hear it. You hear that really deep. Again, this is only coming through the phone mic, but so let me just, if I change it to a different setting, for example, you've got pitch descending. That's pretty cool. So if you're doing stuff like with these little intervals. Or I could do the opposite, go up. Now what I reckon this might be quite good for is it's got this second button on it called swell, and it kind of takes away the attack of the initial note and labours the kind of reverb trail a little bit longer. So let me show you with the pitch up effect still what the swell button does. Disgusting pretty quickly if you're not careful, but what a tool to have a play around with, like to get some inspiration for stuff. I think that's really interesting. Let me change the pitch again. Got that racket. Well, I've never played a reverb pedal that does that, and I'm sure you haven't either. So if you haven't checked them out before, this is from Meris, as I said, the Mercury 7 reverb. It's really disgusting in some ways, but it's also really cool in other ways. So it just depends what you're looking for. Before I turn it off, let me just see if I can get a little bit more of a, not that you'd want to do this, but if you just want a little bit more of a standard, for lack of a better term, reverb sound. Let's see what it does. It's got two settings. It's got a cathedral setting, which is what that was, and an ultra plate setting. So this is the ultra plate. There you go. That's, if you're afraid of everything I just did there. everything, really. So if you're interested in a new reverb pedal, which I'm sure you all are, because we've all got gas for pedals, reverb usually comes pretty high on the list. There we go, Mercury 7 from Meris. Right, before I get on to the other bits of cool gear I've picked out today, I want to make sure I'm not missing any of your questions, because it looks like quite a few are coming in, and for some reason I can't get them to stay on my phone screen, so bear with me a second, please. Okay, hello to a few people. Hello, Rosie. Hello, Steve. How are you all doing? Play a lefty custom shop telly, says Lawn Plumber. Not today. Maybe that'll come in the future, let's see. If I could do it better than I can, then maybe I'll do it more regularly, but we'll see what happens. Okay, Sledgehammer 80s Band, hello. Thanks for all the demos and videos. Quick question, hard one to answer, in brackets. Do you think high-end guitars such as Nags, Anderson, Sir, etc. are really worth the money over more standard models? Okay, it's one of those questions that you have to realise the value in the product. It's not necessarily that you can... Not everyone can quantify the value of instruments in the same way. It has to have the value worthwhile to you, if that makes sense. So, for example, this Troublemaker telly that I'm playing, which is currently priced at a shade under £1,100, for some people this is all the guitar you could ever want and could ever need, and I can totally see why. It's a great guitar, it's made by one of the best manufacturers in the world. It's made in Japan, so it's a quality product. When you jump up to a custom shop guitar, what you tend to find is that it's the attention to details, particularly with a lot of the reissue guitars. That's typically where your money goes in custom shop level guitars from this brand, for example, Fender or Gibson. But just to the end of the stuff you were talking about, the brands you mentioned. So I've got to find a better way to sort these comments out on the screen, because I've just lost your comment. But here we go. Nags, Andersons and Sirs. Yes, those are all obviously more kind of modern contemporary guitars. I think if you've played a guitar that isn't of that caliber price-wise, and you love it, then great. But you do find that there is a huge quality jump, at least I do, because you just, especially when you've played a few of them and your hands grow accustomed and your ears grow accustomed to the feel and the sound of those high-end instruments that are handmade often, there's just no kind of turning back really. So you do have to justify it to yourself. You can't let anyone tell you that the value is what it is and it's going to be the same for everybody, because of course it's not. But in my opinion, yes, once you make the leap to a high-end guitar, I suppose it's like driving an expensive car. You know, you don't need that to perform the same task, but once you've driven an expensive car and you get a taste for the way it feels and responds, the response is the most important thing, then you probably won't look back. So it really depends on your personal set of values and financial values, without getting too deep onto that question. But it's a good question, and it's something that a lot of people wonder, I'm sure, so hopefully that shines a little bit of light on that. And you are right in your follow-up comment, you mentioned that you can get such good stuff for not much money these days. Totally agree with you. Okay, let me jump on to another question. Vasilis, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Hi Jack, can you do a demo for your pedal board? That would be awesome. I will do that at some point, probably not on this channel. I'm going to talk a little bit later on. I've got my own YouTube channel that I'll mention. I'll link in the description if I can. That's where I'll do more personal kind of stuff, but in the realms of the Peach Guitars live videos, I want to keep it about the stuff that we do and sell here. So I hope you understand that. But I will get on to talking about my own gear in due course. Arnish99, PRS 245 SE or Epiphone standard for clean tones. I've got to give it to the PRS because those guitars have coil splits usually on the humbucking pickup. So if you want a real sparkly, shimmery clean tone, PRS have kind of got a little bit more variety in that regard. The Epiphones sound great as well, but you've got to love the sound that they give you, whereas PRS is a little bit more adaptable. So I'd probably go PRS in that particular instance. Right, let's see what else I've got. What's happened upstairs? So basically, all the rooms have kind of, well, we've closed the store obviously, so throughout the lockdown period, everything has had the chance to be rearranged and refreshed for when we do eventually reopen, but the room I'm in right now has been appropriated as an appointment room. So this is usually the Gibson Custom Shop room, and this is still where all the Gibson Custom Shop guitars reside. but this is now an appointment room. So if you come in to try any piece of gear, you're probably going to be in here. As for the rest of the store, like I say, it's all had a little bit of a refresh and a revamp, so nothing major's gone on in terms of what's gone on upstairs. I assume that's what you meant by that question anyway. So yeah, hopefully that answers that. Let me see. I do apologise for the delays between these answers. I've got to keep scrolling back up the top of the questions list. So, okay. Marco Celestino says, great channel, love your store, thank you very much. Can you please check if neck relief is fine on an electric guitar? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but I presume you're asking maybe how you check that. The way I've been told to do it, and I'm not a setup guy, but the best example is finger on the lowest string on the 1st fret, other finger on the highest fret, and then tap the 5th fret with your little finger. And you can tell just kind of by the amount of bounce and play that you've got in that string. If it's totally flat and you're not getting anything, you probably need to just slacken the neck off a bit. If it's really high still, then you probably need to flatten it out a bit. That's just a general rule. I presume that's what your question meant anyway. I hope that helps. There's quite a few questions here, and I don't mean to be rude to people who are asking this about my musical background and playing styles. As I say, I've got my own channel, which I kind of talk more about that over there, just because this channel for Peach Guitars is going to be more about the gear. So I'll address some of those questions at the end, but I just want to make you guys aware of that. That's the place where I'll talk about that stuff more. Think I missed the amp you were using. What is it? Sounds excellent. Thank you very much. I didn't mention it. It's Dr. Z Maz, the old favourite. I've just got a little combo up here, Maz 18. It is a great sounding amp. Let me just play it a bit more on the Maz, because I found that whenever I do a demo of anything, if I want to just be confident in what I'm plugged into, the Maz is just the best amp in the store for that. For me, not always in every style, and it doesn't suit every guitar, but as long as I've got maybe a pedal on the floor as well to complement it, I mean, just for a clean tone, it's absolutely immense. And the thing I love about the Maz is that it's really easy to get it to grit up a little bit, because a lot of amps at low volume, valve amps anyway, will sound just too clean sometimes to use pedals with, or to get that kind of dynamic back and forth going with the response of the guitar. The Maz does it absolutely no problem, and then you stack a pedal onto it. And it takes pedals extremely well. So yes, the Dr. Z Maz. If you haven't heard one by now on the channel, you have now, and you know how great they sound. So there we are. Okay, I think I've got through most of the questions. In fact, Nathan, that should hopefully answer your question. If you're looking into buying a nice tube amp for your new 62 reissue, I presume maybe you mean Strat or Tele. Any suggestions? If you're totally like a blank slate and you have no preferences at all, or reference points that you're talking about with a tube amp, Dr. Z Maz is one of the very best that you could find, because it does a little bit of everything. It does nice clean tones, it does nice overdriven tones. Unless you're looking for a real high gain distorted amp, Dr. Z Maz, or anything by Dr. Z, really, I would highly recommend. Okay. Any chance to demo the new PRS hollow body, the Korean one? We did a demo, if you're talking about the SE hollow body, we did a demo recently on the channel. You can find that quite recently. It was an amazing guitar. Not just for the money, it's just an amazing guitar. And I know a lot of people on the internet have stacked it up against the core level USA PRS guitars, and it comes up quite favourably. So yeah, you can check that out on the Peach Guitars channel, assuming that's the guitar you're talking about, the PRS SE hollow body. Yeah, hopefully you'll find that video and it will give you some info. Right, I've teased a lot about the other pedals that are going on the floor. I talked about the Meris. We've also just taken on Nobles, which is something I was really pleased about, because I wanted to try the famous ODR1 natural overdrive pedal for absolutely ages. I'm sure I'm not alone in watching Tom Bukovac's YouTube videos at the moment, his homeschooling show. Amazing guitar player. If you haven't seen that, watch the homeschooling Tom Bukovac stuff. He's a famous session guy. His go-to overdrive pedal is the Nobles. So I was really curious after that, and I think a lot of those studio guys with really good ears go for the Nobles as their primary drive, and it's really interesting. I've never tried one. It's not quite like anything else. You'd be forgiven for thinking that it's a tube screamer because it's green and it's an overdrive pedal, but let me show you what it does. I've kind of set it fairly conservatively, so as I said, the amp is fairly clean with a tiny bit of bite. Now here's the Nobles. Cleans up really well. I mean, it's not a huge amount of gain. I've got the drive on 4, the level around 6, and I've got the spectrum, which is kind of like a tone shaping filter, I guess, around 7. So it's quite normal settings. And what I love about it is it doesn't have that mid-range push that tube screamers do. It also doesn't have the really badly defined huge bottom end that some distortion pedals do, because that's what they did. They kind of, a lot of distortions you find just beef up all the wrong frequencies in order to try and make you sound big, but you lose that in a band mix. That Nobles just sounds like I've turned the amp up, and that's what I like out of a pedal that at least claims it's a natural sounding pedal, which I think a lot of people are looking for. The Nobles does it really well. Let me just show you a little bit more on the neck pickup. I'll play it first of all with it off, and then I'll turn it on, and you'll hear just how transparent, I hate to use that word, I'm sorry. I've sinned on the guitar internet here by using the word transparent to describe a drive pedal, but it really is. Great sound, and it stacks really well with other pedals as well. I've got the Dualist, the tried and true, the old favourite, the Kingtone Dualist as well. Actually, let me just show you what that sounds like, because it sounds so good. If I put the Nobles with the Dualist going into it, it sounds wicked. Sound that I just had from the start there. You can do all this stuff with really simple overdrive pedals if they're voiced correctly, and I have to say that the Nobles is definitely voiced correctly to stack with other drive pedals. That's what you want to achieve. If you want to get your tones by stacking pedals, we've got the Nobles ODR1 overdrive, so check it out. There's also a mini version, so if you're tight on space on your pedal board, you can get the mini. Sounds pretty much the same. I think this one has maybe more of a bass cut to it, but it's pretty much the same pedal, so check it out on the website. I really like this Nobles, and it's probably less expensive than you might think as well. I'm just going to tease that out there. Okay, a couple more questions, and then I'm going to show you the last bit of cool gear that I've got for today. Steve, the Vemuran Shanks ODS1 is their take on the original Nobles. I love it. I didn't realise that. I knew that it was kind of a transparent drive. Vemuran, for anyone who doesn't know what Steve's talking about, is kind of the opposite end of the pedal scale. They're like super high-end boutique pedals, and they sound incredible, and they're all sort of tweaks on classic designs. Some of them actually quite novel. They've done some really interesting things with classic circuits, but yeah, the Nobles is kind of the honest workman, if you like, and the Vemuran is the sharp-suited. I guess it's you know, it's a similar kind of vibe, but it just depends what you want. If you want to squeeze the maximum amount of tone out of your pedal, then yes, you'll probably get a little bit of a lower noise floor, a bit more of a dynamic range, and a bit more touch sensitivity out of the Vemuran. Be interested to compare the two, actually. So thank you for bringing that point up, Steve. I'd be interested to hear the Nobles against a Vemuran, but there you go. That's a video for another day. Right. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Oh, what tone woods do you prefer on a guitar? Body and fretboard? To be honest, it's kind of... It doesn't really matter that much to me, because if you were to... I mean, it does affect the tone. I'm not going to allow myself to become embroiled in an internet debate where people say that tone woods don't matter. Of course they do, because you hear it acoustically. It matters less so the more distortion you pile on and the more the different types of pickups that you use. Tone woods do impact the tone. I guess I come to realise I really like Gibson style guitars, so mahogany wood body, which this Telecaster is probably one of the reasons I like it. But I think something that's more important to focus on than tone wood is just the general design of the guitar. So generally I tend to go for, if it's a Telecaster shaped body, I'm probably going to like it. And I don't know what it is, it's probably just something psychological where you think you can kind of get an image in your head of what that guitar is going to deliver on, and then whatever tone wood it's got, it's going to sound vaguely Telecaster-ish, if you see what I mean. Especially if it's a bolt-on neck and you know, a Tele-style bridge, even though this has more of a Tune-o-matic style bridge. But if I had to really nitpick, I'd probably say, based on the guitars that I like the most, mahogany, and I like maple necks, but I also like mahogany necks or rosewood necks, so I'm not really narrowing things down much, but I don't like anything too crazy. I really just I like mahogany guitars, maple neck, you know. That's a very good segue into that Les Paul Custom back there, which I might play, as someone's just requested, but that might deserve its own video. I don't really want to just chuck it into this one. We'll see how we go. Although, I'm going to show you another guitar because, you know, I wasn't quite sure how to format these live videos yet, so I appreciate you bearing with me while I do this. As I said earlier on, there's no technical support today. I'm on my own and I've got just my phone, so it's going to be a little bit messy, but I'm going to try and cover a few different things in these live videos. I want to answer your questions and I want to show you gear. So I think that's enough on the telly. I've been wanting to show more of this guitar ever since it came in, because it really is, if you want to talk about what I think to be the ultimate electric guitar that isn't a Telecaster, it's probably this, Gibson Les Paul Jr. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think this is basically like, you get people saying about, you get guitar players, guitarists, or guitarists, you know, the players that only guitar players understand, and you really have to be a little bit of a guitar nut to appreciate them. I think the same applies to certain guitars, because on the surface, a Les Paul Jr. at Gibson custom shop price points, especially, it's a very simple guitar, and you kind of are left wondering, okay, what am I paying Gibson custom shop money for when the guitar's got one semi-microphonic pickup and it's barely been finished, and it's pretty raw guitar. But if you've been playing guitar for a while and you know the kind of guitar players that use this guitar, you understand it. And it's the same thing with the Fender Esquire. I love single pickup guitars for their simplicity, and I've always just thought the Les Paul Jr. is one of the coolest guitars in the world. And you often see, or I do anyway, a lot of my favourite players will use these guitars kind of sparingly every now and again, and whenever they do, they deliver some of their coolest stuff, because you've really just got to work it. You've got nothing to hide behind. It's just one P90 pickup with a volume and a tone, and if I just turn the Nobles on, I haven't played this guitar yet today, but I know it's going to sound great. Paul Jr, ladies and gentlemen. This is just one of the coolest guitar designs ever, and you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to think about which pickup you're on. Oh, they're so good. And what I really like is that they're more versatile than they get credit for. Because you just got volume and tone, you would think, okay, it's the one sound. But actually, what I did throughout the course of when I was playing there is I varied the tone. So if the tone's wide open, it's very bright, it's very snappy. If I just turn the tone down to 7, and now down to 3. Different tones there just by varying the tone control to 3 different positions, and it also cleans up the gain a little bit. So with the tone down at 3 right now, I can play really soft and have it clean, and that's kind of also to do with the Nobles and the Maz. But here's the guitar. Obviously it doesn't sound like that at all, but that's the same guitar as this. And it's all in the tone, it's all in the volume control. It's just a wicked, wicked instrument. So I hope you'll forgive my extended rambling about the Les Paul Jr there. I'm sure a lot of people already know the virtues of it, but this guitar is still here, it hasn't sold ever since it came in, and I'm kind of pleased about that because it means I got to play it today, but at the same time I'm sad that someone is missing out on this guitar right now when they could be playing it and loving it. So just do yourself a favour, go to the website, Gibson Les Paul Jr, custom shop, 58, TV yellow as well. It's got to be TV yellow, and it's got to be the double cut for me. That's just my take on it. Let me see if I missed any questions there. Okay. If you had to buy one guitar and one amp other than Dr. Z, okay, from stock in store, what would you get? Obviously that totally depends on what style you're going to play and the context of what you're going to play. If you're just playing at home, I'm kind of the mindset that like a Fender Princeton or a Fender Deluxe Reverb, particularly the 68 Customs, which we've just done a demo on, they're just, if you plug any guitar into that, that is the true epitome of what that guitar sounds like. And you know, it's maybe the Princeton wouldn't be loud enough to gig, and maybe it wouldn't have enough gain or work with pedals well enough to do like a high gain, heavy sound, but just for pure, clean to semi-dirty electric guitar, a Fender 65 or 68 reissue, Princeton or a Deluxe, you know, it doesn't have to be too loud to play at home. If, however, you want a gigging amp, then I'm going to give the vote to probably the Sir Badger, because alongside the Maz that I talked about, the Dr. Z, the Sir Badger is one of the most versatile amps that I've ever played as well, and it has been my gigging amp for years. There's so many different tonal options and gain control options and stuff like that, but it's still a really simple amp. It's kind of the Les Paul Jr of the amp world. You look at it and it's a 6-control Marshall style amplifier, the Sir Badger I'm talking about, and you think, okay, I get that, I get the gist of that, I know what that's going to sound like, but actually you don't, because you can plug into it and you can get really gorgeous clean tones, you can get really nice sparkly, chimey, voxy type tones, and then you can crank it and get Marshall type plexi tones. So depends what you want, but yeah, if you're playing at home, little Fender amp. If you're playing a gig, Sir Badger. Those are my very quick thought picks, I'm sure I'm going to walk out this room straight away and think, oh no, that's my choice. But that's off the top of my head. Hope that answers the question. What's my favourite two-rock amp? Again, they're all for different purposes, really. It's definitely in my future to buy a two-rock. I kind of have to, because I work here at Peach Guitars, and John's got two-rocks, and he knows what two-rocks are about, and it's kind of a general consensus that two-rocks are one of the greatest thing to ever happen to the amplifier industry, and whenever I play one, you do kind of get the max. It's kind of what I was just talking about with the Fender Princeton thing, like the true identity of a guitar comes out, but it's that literally times 10, because it's 100 watts as opposed to 10 or 12 watts. I know the maths don't work out, but on paper they do. As to what my favourite is, the classic reverb I think is just the best all-rounder, because it's the flagship amp. It's got a few of the features that appear on other amps that players like the FET, the FET input. And you've got a couple of boosts, you can boost the frequencies, it's got the EQ bypass, and it's got that gorgeous reverb. So the classic reverb signature is as a safe bet, if nothing else, just sounds amazing. You know, and you can get it as a 100 watt, or you can get it as a 40 watt, you can get it as a combo. So that's probably my choice, but I also love the traditional clean. I think that's an amazing amp if you just want a pure clean tone. It's not quite as sparkly, it's not quite as, I'm not sure what the right word would be. It's really difficult to find the right dialogue when you're describing amplifiers in particular, but the traditional clean just sounds a little bit more, I don't know. Go and watch, you can check out the comparison video that I did before of the classic reverb, the traditional clean and the Bloomfield drive. They're all amazing, and I kind of talked through the strengths of those amps in that video, but again, it's very hard to quantify. It's just one of those things that you play and you love. I also love the TS1. It's one of my favourite amps I've ever played. And the new one is coming, it's on the way. The new one with the improved effects loop, and it's had some revisions to the lead channel, I believe. So I'm really excited to play the new TS1 as well, because the old one was one of my favourite amps. But again, it's just circumstantial, and if you're playing a humbucker loaded guitar or a single coil guitar, I'm going to give the vote to the classic reverb, because it's just still the best all-rounder, in my opinion. And you know, in one of these future videos, I'll definitely feature a classic reverb and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, a few other questions came in there while I was going. Asri, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Asri asked, do let us know what string gauge do you prefer? It's kind of guitar specific. Generally, I've always floated around. When I was younger, I started playing obviously very light strings, 9 gauge, moved up to 10s gradually. As I got more into blues playing, I wanted to go as heavy as I could, and I did. I mean, I guess part of it was like a kind of a mental challenge to myself to go heavy. I think a lot of players who are interested in blues playing do that because of certain notable guitar players that allegedly used heavy strings. So I was playing 12s and stuff like that, 12s and 13s, and then just realised that there's a tonal difference, and it's not always a good one. I'll make the quick tangent into string gauge here. Everyone says bigger strings sound better. They do for certain things. They give you a massive fat tone coming from the guitar. But that can also be at the cost of dynamics. And I found that one day. I put my heavier strings on a guitar, a Fender guitar, and it just didn't work. It lost the character of that guitar. I think it was a Jazzmaster. And obviously players do use heavy strings on Jazzmasters with great effect, but for what I was going for, sometimes a lighter string, and you only have to listen to players like Jimmy Page or Brian May, or any of the country guys, where the light strings are kind of part of the tone and the touch. So I quickly moved on from that big strings are best argument. For me, I kind of like to split the difference. I've always liked 11s, but I'm actually playing at the moment the Ernie Ball 10 to 48 set, which is the tops of 10s and 3 bottom strings of an 11 set. And that's kind of the best balance for me. That'll probably change and continues to evolve, but yeah, 10 to 48 to answer your string gauge question. And obviously on the guitars here, it's just whatever they come with. So I'm used to playing 10 to 46 most of the time. That's what most guitars come with from the factory with. And so I've kind of had to just adapt my playing style to 10s. So that's why I've kind of split the difference, you see, because I play 10s most of the time here. I usually play 11s at home, so I just kind of thought 10 to 48. Then it feels like I'm pretty much playing the same thing every time I play guitar, whether it's here or gigging or whatever. So that's the answer to that question. Bit of a long answer. Do you like Floyd-equipped guitars? Yes, I really do. Again, it just depends on the circumstance. I wouldn't use one as like my main guitar because rhythmically I find it hard to do things. I mean, the bridge isn't actually impacting on this at all, but I really find it hard to do stuff like kind of intonated, well intonated stuff. And just really kind of loose right hand stuff. I find that hard on a Floyd bridge, Floyd Rose bridge I'm talking about here. But for other stuff, they're amazing, and they have a certain tone. If you're playing high gain, they have a really direct, percussive kind of a sound, and that can work really well. I know a lot of players use them for all manner of styles, but it's not my go-to. But I do really like Floyd's. I've never really played many guitars with Kala or Kala bridge systems, which I guess was kind of the Floyd Rose equivalent back in the day. So I couldn't speak to the differences, but yeah, I like Floyd's. I like them very much. Okay, let me see how I'm doing here. How does the Nags Kenai J compare? Okay, big question there. We have filmed a video where I compared, not this guitar, but another Les Paul Jr. to the Nags Kenai J. And I actually think that the Nags is very favourable in a lot of ways. You could say, you know, usually it intonates better. The pickup, I can't remember if it's got a noiseless pickup or not, but it just seemed to be a quieter P90 pickup. It had a smaller neck, so it's more comfortable for more players. The Nags Kenai J is an amazing guitar. I love that guitar, and actually if it came down to it, I'd really have a hard time picking between the two, but I wanted to play this one today because a Gibson is a Gibson, and it's kind of, they've got their own thing, and it's it just depends what you like. It's like when you play a real Marshall against a boutique representation of a Marshall style amp. Sometimes those boutique things, like a Friedman for example, just have, it's way easier to play, it's way more practical because you can use it at lower volumes, for example. I mean, you know, it's an amp as opposed to a guitar. But then sometimes you just want to play the real thing, and there's something in the tone that's different with a real Marshall, and there's something in the tone and feel that's different with a real Gibson. So the Nags is an amazing guitar, but sometimes you just got to give it to the originator, as it were. Okay, I feel I've answered a lot of questions. There's so many questions coming in, guys. I really appreciate all this, but I don't want to be rambling on for ages. I'll just do one more, and then I'll play a little bit more with the gear that I've picked out. Oh, Boss Tube Amp Expander or 2 Notes Captor X, is the Tube Amp Expander worth double the price? That's a hard question. It's got a lot more features to it, and I have a Tube Amp Expander myself. They're both amazing bits of kit. When I played the Captor X, I was really, really impressed. We did actually film a demo for it, which may or may not come out because they've all sold. So, you know, you guys seem to buy them regardless of the demo that we did or didn't put out. But yeah, for the money, I think if you just want to plug your amp into your computer or to a PA system and be able to record, the Captor X is amazing. And yeah, as you point out, it's half the price. But the Tube Amp Expander, for me, I went with that because I like the fact that it's got the 100 watt Class AB power amp in it. So you can use it either to attenuate an amp or to turn a quiet amp up, which is really appealing because sometimes you find this Maz 18, for example, that I'm playing today, it's not always best to crank the hell out of an amp because sometimes you want that dynamic clean, which I've got right here. Let me turn the drive pedal off. And that's already fairly crunchy. You know, if you really wanted sparkly clean, you can get it, but it is barking a little bit. And sometimes you just want to be able to turn that up. And so rather than going out and buying a bigger amp, for certain gigs, I think the tube amp expander with that extra power really does have a very practical use in that regard. So it just depends what you want. If you want all the features that the Boss has got to give, then nothing else really compares to it. I feel it's like the perfectly planned out attenuator, come load box, come effect unit, because it's got effects built in. But if you just want a great device to plug your amp into, and you can really do some clever stuff with the mic positioning and stuff like that, the IRs in the virtual wall of sound room that Two Notes call it, it's an amazing product. So yeah, it's not necessarily worth double the money to go up to the tube amp expander. I think that the Captor X will perform the job that most people wanted to do for a much more attainable price point. So yeah, it's hard to say that it's not justified to save the money, because it really is if that's all you need. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, these questions are brilliant, wonderful, fantastic, and I thank you all for them. I think in the interest of saving time, I'm just going to answer a couple of the Instagram questions that we got as well, because I appreciate everyone that's commented here, and I also appreciate all the comments that we got on Instagram. So let me just answer a couple more of those. Someone actually asked about string gauge, so hopefully I've answered that question as well. In my haste, I scribbled down the names of the people that answered these questions and the questions themselves, and I can't read my own writing, so forgive me if this is horrifically wrong. Martin Selen is what I've written. That could correspond to an Instagram username, or it could not. He asked about good master volume amps versus using an attenuator with an amp. So I actually like, and I talked about this on a video, a shameless plug here for my own YouTube channel, Jack Griffiths Music, which I'll link below. I kind of talked about this in a video on there, where sometimes it comes down to playing, how you attack the guitar. So, for example, the Maz 18 is not cranked up that loud, and it's not attenuated. It is fairly loud. I've got the master on about 10 o'clock. And sometimes that's great, because you can get the amp to the sweet spot using the master volume, you know, so it's still most of the tone is coming from the preamp. The power section isn't really working that hard. And that master volume is part of the tone, and it's great because if I turn it up more, it's just going to overdrive more. But that's not actually what I want in this case. Equally, if I turn it down more, it is going to start to sound a bit thin. However, when you attenuate an amp, no matter how good that attenuator is, it does affect the feel, because it's literally just dissipating that power. So you're losing the power from the amplifier that would otherwise be hitting the speaker. And when you do that, the dynamics change. The tone might stay the same, and if you record the amp at those different attenuated settings, it probably sounds broadly the same, but the way it feels is totally different. And that's to do with how it's hitting the speaker, and a number of other factors. So I actually kind of prefer, if the amp's got a good master volume, which most amps nowadays do, the master volume on the Maz is post-phase inverter, and that's really where the magic happens in the circuit. So you can just turn the amp down, and it's not as drastic as, like, for example, a Marshall master volume would be, where it really affects the tone. There is a tonal difference, and it just depends what you like. What I was saying about the way you play, though, is that I actually find that just turn an amp up loud and play soft sometimes. If you're going for if you want to get the maximum amount of overdrive out of your amp and you're playing hard, then an attenuator is probably the way to go, because the amp just sounds like it's louder, even though it's actually not. And your playing style doesn't really matter whether the amp's loud or not, if you see what I mean. But if your amp has a master volume, turn it up as loud as you can and just play soft. And that way, when you dig in, you've got all this dynamic range, and that only comes from letting an amp breathe. So if you're playing really hard and that's your dynamic, use an attenuator, I'd say. But if you want to play dynamically, master volume can actually kind of be your friend, because it's part of the tone shaping of the amp, and then you can just let your playing dynamics do the rest. God, that was a very involved answer. I apologise if that person isn't even watching this video. Hopefully some of you that are got something from that. Right, I think that's enough of the questions for today. As I said before, thank you so much for sending all these in. I'm going to try and address some more of these in the future. I'll probably do another live video next week. But to the end of, as I said, I've had a lot of questions about my own playing and stuff like that, my influences, whatever, how I learned and all that stuff. Check out my own channel, Jack Griffiths Music, because that's where I talk about all that stuff quite freely, and I respond to questions like that. With the Peach Guitar stuff, it's really about the shop and it's about the gear, and then I guess my thoughts on gear. So hopefully I can answer some gear related questions, but in terms of the stuff that's about my playing, I kindly direct people to Jack Griffiths Music on YouTube or on Instagram, whatever you fancy. And hopefully in the future as well, we're going to kind of merge the two. So stay tuned to the Peach Guitars channel, of course, but I will also be doing more with my own channel here in the shop as well, hopefully. So that's where I'll answer all those questions in the future. I do just have to address one question from Cinnamon1978, who asked on Instagram, when did you start growing your hair? I'm sure this has been something that's plagued a lot of us. Throughout this lockdown period, it's been horrific to not get a haircut. Fortunately, I started growing my hair before the lockdown, which meant that I was already living with unruly long hair, so I finally got a haircut. But I'm sure that the struggle is still going on for a lot of you out there. I thought that was quite an interesting little question, because yeah, it's affected all of us. So fortunately, I got in there early and started growing it before the lockdown. If I hadn't, I'd be very upset if I still had my ice gem, as I was referred to by John. So there we are. I hope that's addressed a few of your questions, and I've talked about some cool gear. I talked about this Les Paul Jr. For anyone who's joined since, I was talking also about, quick recap, the Troublemaker Telly from Fender. I said this is probably one of my very favourite guitar, non-custom shop Fender guitars, as an alternative to a regular Telecaster if you want something that's different, with humbuckers and four controls from one of the best brands in the world, the Troublemaker, made in Japan Telecaster. So I talked about that. I also talked about a couple of new pedals, new brands that we've taken on. Let me actually, for the hell of it, I'll show you what they were, because it's no fun hearing about things that you can't see. The Nobles ODR1 Overdrive, in my opinion, one of the very best overdrive pedals that I've played. Very interesting, I'll put it that way, price point for what it is. Great overdrive pedal, and it sounds really natural. It just sounds like you've turned your amp up. And also I was talking about the Meris Mercury 7 reverb, which, as I said, kind of looks, it's in the Strymon lane of those really high-tech, tweakable digital pedals. Sounds amazing though, and you can really get some cool reverb effects that you might not have been able to do so before. So there we are, that's some cool gear. I've answered some questions. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like. Comment down below with your thoughts as well once the video is over. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I really appreciate all the support we've got. And as I mentioned, as someone's just asked this very second, it's Jack Griffiths Music from my own YouTube channel, where I'll answer more of your playing related questions. So that's all for today, guys. I'll link that down below, by the way. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in future videos, but I'll see you on this live video next week. We'll post when we're going to do it. All right, take care of yourselves.